And for my next part, it is about the barriers of communication between officers and the public or whatever. And again, I know this is going on public YouTube, and I'm probably just going to take it down once I'm done with the class. This is all my opinions. This is what I think, and this is how I think we can fix it and what we can do. So what is a barrier of communication? Let's start with that. There is many things such as cultural barriers, historical barriers, and biased barriers. There's probably a better word for that, but those are my three, in my opinion, that are sort of the big so-called barriers. So I'm going to go through each one, and I'm going to state my opinion and how I think we can fix it. What we can do to, maybe prolong it from happening, or maybe we can fix it entirely, or how we can have an open mindset on the thing. So for the first one I'm going to talk about is the cultural barriers. Cultural and historical barriers are kind of similar, so there's going to be things I say in both that I said in the other. Just an FYI, they're very similar. But cultural barriers. So I'm going to use a nationality for an example, right? Me, a white male, have not experienced some of these cultural barriers. I am white. I usually won't experience these sort of things. The cultural one I will, but we're going to get into that. So what is a cultural barrier? A cultural barrier is sort of, let's say, language barrier, right? You have a Hispanic person and a white person, right? Male or female for either one, right? So let's say white officer is sitting on the road. It doesn't have to be a white officer. It can be an African American officer. It can be an Asian officer, whatever. I was just using that as an example. It doesn't have to be a Hispanic person. It could be any sort of nationality, right? So let's say there's an officer on the side of the road. He's got his gun out, his radar gun, and he is scanning people for speeding, right? All of a sudden, whatever nationality you want, comes flying by, right? It's 25, and they're going 50, right? That's a pretty big margin difference. That's what, 25. It's like 30 something miles over, right? That's a fat ticket. So they come flying by, right, past this police officer. The police officer's like, he's going 15 to 25. He throws on his sirens, put his gun away, and he's off, right? The person pulls over. He gets out of it. He reads the license plate. You know what I mean? Reads the license plate and sort of, gets everything written down. I don't know the full process. And then he gets out of his car and he goes up to the driver's window and he's asking for license and registration. But this person in this car might not understand English, right? So we're using this as in America, right? Most people in America do speak English, some others don't, and that's okay. You know what I mean? That's awesome about America. It's melting pot. There's so many different cultures and languages, and that's one of the biggest things I love about this country. So this officer speaks English and this person doesn't, whether it's they speak Mandarin, they speak Spanish, they speak Hindu, whatever, right? This officer is trying to say, hey, I need to see license and registration. And the person in the vehicle doesn't know what they're talking about. They can't understand him, and then the officer may get frustrated at the fact about this, right? He may be license and registration, blah, 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 like being very stern, but the person doesn't understand what they're saying, right? That can be sort of a cultural barrier, right? They speak their cultural language, right? The person in the vehicle speaks their culture's language. Whatever nationality they are, they speak that language, right? So this can perform some problems, right? There's right then and there's a language barrier, sort of. The officer is trying to tell the person in the car what they need. The person in the car can't understand, right? And this is a huge thing. I haven't dealt with this because I speak my culture's language. I speak English, right? And most officers speak English. So you have this language barrier. What are some ways we can get past that? You know what I mean? Most of the time, I run into a lot of cultural barriers with my job. I'm not a police officer. I work at a front desk of a hotel. Okay, but I have had plenty of times where there's people from other countries come in. They don't speak English, and that's fine. Luckily, I'm a little multilingual. I know a little bit to bypass myself in a couple languages. I can speak a little bit of Spanish, enough to have a conversation. I can speak a little bit of German, enough to have a semi-good conversation. And I can speak a little bit of Japanese. Not very well, that's a very hard language, but I can speak a little bit, right? So I have ran into it, and most of the time, people that don't speak English or very broken English or sort of, they only know very few words, they are usually going to have a translation app. And if they don't, then I bring out my phone and I have a translation app on my phone. That's not Google Translate. Google Translate sucks. I forget the one I have on my phone, what it's called. But so we have this barrier, right? And there's a couple things that could go on here, right? Either the officer pulls out his phone and he translates what he is saying into that person's language, or the person in the car is going to sort of, do the same thing. Pull out a translation app, tell them what they're saying in English, right? Boom, done, problem solved. He either gets a ticket, he gets a warning, and he's on his way, right? But there could be a third one that could happen here. There could be the officer gets so out. I read a case about this. I don't remember what it was, but an officer got so mad at the fact that he pulled over a Hispanic male that he could not speak English, that he arrested him and threw him out of the car because he could not speak English. That is not okay. That should not happen. That will not happen. That is terrible. That is terrible. We don't do that third thing. Verse 2, I think is perfect. I think maybe having officers who can speak multiple language or enough to have a conversation. And, like I said, I can speak decently 3 languages, enough to have a conversation. I can speak some Spanish. If I have a Hispanic person come up to me and he's not speaking English, I can make my way in a conversation. I might not totally get what they're saying, but enough to the point to where I can get them what they need. They can tell me their name. I can check them into the room. So having more equipped with translation, I think, would be a huge, I cannot emphasize how huge I think this would be, is having someone who either can speak multiple languages, whether it's bilingual or multilingual, or equipping officers with a very good translation app. Or I've seen these little things, they're these little they're that big, and they're usually very slim, and they have little speakers. I would go license registration, or I would go hello, right? And let's say it's a Hispanic, they would go, actually, I'm going to use a different example, right? I say thank you, right? And there's a German man, and he says Dankeschön, right? Then it would tell me, because Dankeschön in German means thank you, right? So I would say thank you. It would say Dankeschön, and then the person, let's say, using another word, nein, that's a famous German word, no, is what it means, nein, no. Then it would listen to the other person, and it would say no in English if I didn't understand, right? I'm going to re-explain this. So little things, little translation device. I'm trying to say something to a German person. I say thank you. It would come out saying Dankeschön, that is thank you in German, right? And then let's say he says no in German, which would be nein, and then that speaker would listen to what I was saying, or the person was saying, and it would come out in the other language. And it has little settings for all the languages, you know what I mean? I think having something like that would be huge. I think there is unfortunately a huge barrier within these sort of language barriers, and they're difficult to come across. They're they're not difficult. Sorry, they're difficult to realize and understand. So I can see where a lot of people might, be upset at the fact that, they don't speak. Not upset. You shouldn't be upset if someone can't speak your language. It's 2020. It's almost 2026, people. Not everyone speaks English. It's not the world language. It's not the most known language. Spanish is one of the most known languages. I believe everyone should learn Spanish, but that's just me. I just learn languages for fun, because why not? So either having people that can speak multiple languages, having like a little translation app or a little translation device would really be big to solve this problem, right? And there's other cultural barriers that lean a little bit more into the historical barrier side. So now I'm going to go into the another cultural barrier that I myself have came across, okay? And it's not necessarily my nationality. Anyone can be a part of this culture. But in my last video, I said I'm very much in the punk scene and the metal scene. I'm very much in it. I've played all over the West Coast and all over tons of cities, So I consider myself very much in that scene, And there was a time, okay, I went to the border, all right? I'm with my buddy. I'm with my guitarist and my biggest band that I'm in. My biggest band. The rest of my bands are all side projects, right? No, it's my power violence band, right? I'm sitting in the car, my little BMW, and I'm going up to the Border Patrol thing, right? And I wasn't wearing this shirt, but I was wearing a death metal shirt, right? And it said, and you can't read it. I can read it because I know the band, but like normal people aren't going to be able to read what it says. It says Blood Incantation. It's a death metal band I like, right? It's got it all up and down the sleeves. It's got it right here, and then it's got like Saturn, and then its rings are like skulls, and on the back it has like this cool pyramid and like says something about aliens. I don't know. I really enjoy the band. They're a technical death metal band. To be scientific technical death metal is what they call themselves. So I get up to here, right? And immediately the Border Patrol agent looks at my sweatshirt, I saw him eye my sweatshirt, look at my buddy who was wearing a Chelsea Grin shirt. And if you don't know what a Chelsea Grin is, a Russian torture method. And he had like this like skull being and like violent. It was violent, and I understand that, right? Automatically doesn't ask for my passport, doesn't ask for anything, automatically goes pull over for me. So we're like, oh my gosh, pull over, whatever. And this officer at the border, BP officer, asks us what we're wearing. I explain to him it's a band I like. It's a death metal band called Blood Incantation. They sing about aliens. My buddy, he goes, Chelsea Grin shirt. It's a deathcore band that I like. They sing about whatever. And he, right off the bat, automatically assumed us. Automatically looked at us and went, these guys are bad news. Right? We went up to Neptune Records in Vancouver. I brought back a Neil Young record. I'm a huge folk fan. I brought back a Neil Young record. I sat in an interrogation room for an hour over the shirt I was wearing and a Neil Young record. Right there, it's not technically cultural. I wouldn't consider it a culture, but it's a group of people, so it has its own roots and its own culture and every sort of nationality. It's like I consider it like an overarching culture, I know people who are white, Asian descent, African American, Hispanic, whatever in the scene of music, you know what I mean? So I say cultural loosely, but that's another thing I've noticed is that people, these officers like automatically assume because I'm wearing, you're not going to know what PPT means, right? But it stands for puppy playtime, right? I understand the back of my sweatshirt, it says power violence. I understand that I'm wearing something that's probably not, people are going to look at me and they're going to go, like, is he going to stab me? I think that's another sort of cultural thing, again, loosely, that can get a bad rap, you know what I mean? So I think there's a lot of bias, almost. sort of like what's the word? Sort of like, I don't know how to explain it. Like sort of this, like automatically jumping to the conclusion that I'm an evil person for what I'm wearing, right? And I think that goes along with cultural racism. You know, maybe an officer doesn't like the African American community. He's automatically going to go beep, 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 bad, right? Someone looks at my sweatshirt, you know? Like, it's crazy, you know? I live in the country, but I live really, really close to Linden. So I've had people like not treat me well because of what I'm wearing. I just enjoy a form of music, you know? Just like they might enjoy country. I enjoy screaming into a microphone about my feelings and things I don't like, you know? So there's another sort of again, loosely cultural term that I think can be stopped. So, and this goes with any sort of cultural thing. If officers maybe have a more open mind a little bit, you know, just because I'm wearing something you don't like or the color of my skin isn't yours, that doesn't mean you get to attack me like, you know what I mean? So I believe if having a more open mind and understanding of any sort of culture, whether it's music, nationality, food, whatever, you know, like having more open mind, you know, that just because this person's skin color isn't yours, or this person is wearing a metal shirt, or this person doesn't like country music or pop music, like, you know, like automatic, those last couple examples, the last two, the pop and country music, those were kind of like exaggerated examples, but you know, doesn't mean I hate you, and doesn't mean that I am trying to actively pursue and hurt you as an officer. You know, I feel like a lot of the time some officers may be like, danger, you know what I mean? Okay, so now we're going to go into historical barriers, right? So, historically, some nationalities have had a harder time with the police force than others. One of them being African American community, right? That's a big example, right? Years, you know, I mean, like, white people have been racist, and it sucks. I'm not racist at all, but there's been people who are racist, you know, and they've always gotten a very bad rap towards police officers. I think that is terrible. I think that's so evil. It's so terrible. Just because they have different color of skin than you, doesn't mean you get to be prejudiced. You get to be attack the other, right? You know, there has been historical I can't say the word. Historical incidents there of African American people being beat by police officers, and this really does suck. But there's ways around it. I'm going to get to that in a second. And the last one is bias barriers, as I like to call it, you know. And it kind of flows in with cultural and historical barriers, you know. It's more of an overarching thing. Is people have their own opinions. People look different. There's no one in the same. You may have someone that looks similar than you. You're going to have someone who has the same skin color as you, who might like the same music or clothes or video games or movies or whatever, right? There's going to be people, but everyone is different. Everyone is something different, and being able to understand that, I think, is huge. And I think a bias barrier is officers maybe having an opinion on someone because of how they look or how they act. You know what I mean? So I think that is a huge one. How we can fix this is, it's kind of a hard one to fix, in my opinion, but sort of, again, having, you know, better translation for those language barriers. And then for that more historical and sort of bias barriers, I think just trying to do better, you know. I know plenty of people who are a part of different ethnic communities who, you know, police aren't super nice to them because of that, you know. But I do know a lot of officers who don't want them to have that bad look. So therefore, they make sure that no matter what color of your skin, no matter what nationality, no matter what kind of things you like, they're gonna make you comfortable. They're gonna be nice, you know. And I understand there's this sort of warrior mindset, like how we've talked about, and this sort of wanting to uphold the law, you know, sort of thing, and being big and tough. I'm a police officer, you know. But maybe if we step away from that for a second, really think, understand what is going on, you know, and get to the chase before jumping to conclusions, I think that would fix a lot. And I think it's going to be hard to do. I do. I think it's going to be something that's going to take, as a country, a lot. You know, not a lot of countries have racist police officers. My research, it's crazy. America is like, it's insane. And again, it's, you know, like, if a white officer walks into O Block, for instance, if you don't know what O Block is, it's a very famous part, I think it's Chicago, a very famous town, you know. A lot of rappers have come out of there, you know what I mean? King Von, it's the only one I can think of off the top of my head. Can't believe I'm talking about O Block. If a white officer walked into O Block, right, this is a very gang-affiliated area, right? They walk into O Block, you know, they're gonna get harassed and they're gonna get yelled at. But because there is that historical barrier, these people that live in this city have been attacked or hurt by officers coming into their portion of town for response calls, right? Since the 60s, 50s, that's happened. So there is this preemptive thought in their head that this white male officer, or any sort of color of officer, is here to hurt me, is here to, and it doesn't have to be an active thought that they're thinking. It can literally just be sort of like subliminal thought. And I think this is a very hard one to fix. And I did a lot of thorough research on how I think we can fix this. But I don't necessarily, there isn't really one, you know. It's going to take time. And for language barriers, I think we can really get that one covered pretty fast, you know, translation, or having people that can sort of speak multiple languages, you know. But for the more brutality side of things within cultural and historical barriers, is more thorough background checks, you know. You can't really check if someone's like, you can, but they can lie, you know. That's what a polygraph test, I don't know if they ask those sort of questions, but you know, having more thorough background checks. What have these people been doing with their lives before they became an officer, before they were about to become an officer? What sort of things did they like do as a child? Like more questions to ask, you know, to really make sure we're not hiring people that are out to get other people because they have this preset mind to them that this person is a different culture, skin color, or race that I am. You know what I mean? That's something we can fix. But it's going to be hard, and I think it will take many, many, many years of time. So that is it for my second video. Again, these are all my opinions, how I think it could work. I know this is going onto the public internet. So, again, these are my things that I think could work. These are my opinions. If you don't agree, okay, cool. But, yeah. Thank you.